Well, hello and welcome to the Footy Interchange. Adam Papalia with you, and looking forward to another big episode today. We've got so much to chat about, so much to get through as we crisscross the country and get into each and every state and talk to the experts on the ground. It's great to have your company. Great to have you back with us as well on the podcast. Now, this is normally where I'd just be handballing across to Will Schofield to have a chat to him, but he has been silenced this week. He's lost his voice. Gather Round has claimed another victim, so I'm very pleased to say that I do have Eliza Reilly with me from Code Sports. Eliza, great to have you along.
It's pretty hard to silence Will Schofield, I reckon, but I was looking at the stats earlier. We have 194 games, one premiership and one set of working vocal cords between us.
That is true.
Here we are.
Here we are, indeed. Looking forward to it. I think a fair bit of FOMO from a fair few people about Gather Round and not being over there for the for Gather Round, but the way that people are just looking a little bit weary after Gather Round, I think is not something I'm too disappointed about.
Yeah, Adelaide's done a number on some people. Perhaps we didn't get invited and we pulled up the best out of anyone. We just watched all the games on the TV.
It looked like a great spectacle, though,
it was. I did have a bit of FOMO. They do it so well, the South Australians, and I feel like they've very much put their stamp on it, and it's going to be pretty hard to rip it away from them.
Yeah, great weather, incredible range of games, great venues. I think the Barossa was amazing the way that looked and came across on the TV. But, I think that it's claimed more than a few victims. So, Will Schofield, a little bit of a disgrace to yourself, mate, that you couldn't just rein it in over Gather Round. Glad you had a good time. And if anyone wants to give him a clip in the YouTube comments, feel free to do so because he certainly deserves it. Eliza, let's talk some footy. Gather Round, obviously, there's plenty of storylines to come out of that, and we'll chat to Sim and we'll talk to a few people. But given you are our WA correspondent, let's hit the WA issues straight off the top. And West Coast pretty resoundingly beaten by the Blues on the weekend, and pretty resoundingly copped it from each and every footy show across the last couple of days as well as their fans too. What's your read on West Coast over the last couple of days and the fallout from what was another really disappointing loss?
Yeah, I mean, it's very disappointing. You know, they've been telling us it's a new era, new coach, new way of doing things, but it's the same West Coast as the past 3 years, isn't it? And it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. I think some of their kids are definitely showing signs and being the ones to give fans a little bit of hope, but it's again, the senior players are in the firing line, they're under pressure, there's, conceding mammoth scores, mammoth margins against a Carlton side who went into this game without having won a game either. And I think you looked at Michael Voss's comments post-game where he said, I should be sitting here with a smile on my face and I'm not. And it was sort of this undertone of, we know how bad the opposition is and we're not really celebrating this as much as we should be because West Coast are that historically bad. Yeah,
lowest contested numbers, which has been pretty well documented over the last little while. Worst ever on record it is for champion data. I think for the fans, and that was the feeling we got on radio on the weekend, on 6PR with the fans ringing, like literally the phone lines, as soon as one hung up, another fan would be calling in and wanting to have their say on the club, and just frustrated because Carlton hadn't won a game to that point. They go into it thinking, actually, we might be a chance here of being competitive and actually being able to pinch it. And then to put up a performance like that with some of the little instances within the game which are really disappointing. You look at the man on the mark instance where Patrick Cripps was able to just waltz into a goal in the goal square. Those types of things happening on the way through. And then the fallout from it as well, obviously been pretty well documented by the West over here in an interview with them, that Brady Hoff was pretty emotional after the game. So you sort of wonder how the players are feeling and how they turn that around now going into a Friday night game against the Bombers.
Yeah, and with someone like Brodie, who's obviously been a West Coast fan since he was a kid, was absolutely beyond belief to get drafted to that club. You just hope that he's not feeling embarrassed or reflecting poorly on the way he handled that interview, because that, I think, is the ultimate summation of the impact it's having on the players. I mean, we've seen fans saying they don't care, that they're not showing enough effort, they're not putting together performances to be proud of, and then a player breaks down in tears post-game. I think that's the ultimate sort of sign of the emotional toll it is taking on the playing group, and you can't question their commitment to it if a player is literally in tears post-game. So I hope Brodie is holding up okay, and we just want to acknowledge that, that sort of showcasing of emotions is something to be applauded, not sort of looked down upon.
Yeah, and for anyone that hasn't heard Jake Waterman on 6PR and Wild Water Sports last night, he spoke really passionately about how much they're hurting and what they're trying to do. And we also had Jack Graham on post-game on Saturday too. He dropped a couple of F-bombs, I think, and swearing a little bit on the way through.
I think that's unders.
Yeah, true. But he was talking about, and we questioned them on the training standards and how much they're training, because that was one of the questions that's been coming out is, are they doing enough work, and are they not doing as many sessions as others? He sort of spoke more about the fact that when they are training, maybe they're not training hard enough to get the best out of themselves, and that's the real balance you've got when you've got a young team and some of them don't quite know how to actually perform at that level and train at that level to get better. But right now it feels like such a long way back.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's bang on the money there, because there was that sort of question about the training and whether they were doing enough with the travel requirements and everything that goes into being a team in WA. But this club won a flag under the exact same arrangement, 7 years ago?
Yep.
So we can't be questioning the sort of toll of the travel. I think it's just the standards. And Jake Waterman is someone who we know to be one of the hardest trainers on that list. So it's going to be that sort of mid-tier to veteran players who are going to have to upskill these kids and show them the way forward, because at the moment it's just looking like such a far road back.
It is. We'll talk a fair bit more about it. A lot of correspondence coming through in the question time of this podcast as well, so we'll talk more about West Coast in that. A lot of feedback coming through. Switching across to Fremantle, a real blow for them with Nat Fyfe getting injured, a moderate grade hamstring injury from the weekend.
Yeah, it was pretty sad scenes, I think, from all of us in the sort of outer watching this unfold, and knowing that he had to miss a waffle game because he did have that knee soreness sort of return, and that was a small little hurdle that he only missed the 1 week for. But then the first game he roll out, first quarter, does a hamstring, and I think Nat Fyfe's body is telling him that the end is near, but he's been such an incredible servant and player for that football club that it would be really sad to not give him that sort of fitting farewell he deserves. And from here on in, it's going to be, how do we get Nat Fyfe back on the football field and having an impact for this footy club, because he played almost every game last year and was that big body in the midfield that allowed guys like Sarong and Brayshaw to shine, even if he wasn't having the same impact himself that we've come to know from him. So I don't know whether there's a sort of going to be a return to that forward experiment that he obviously tried and didn't really get the hang of a couple years ago, but seeing the way Patrick Dangerfield's gone about it at Geelong, that's sort of the model, right? If he can have that impact as a deep key forward, then that might be his way back into the team, because I think the midfield unfortunately might have gone past him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people make those snap judgments and reactions and say, oh, he's done a hamstring, that's it. Like, don't even try for the rest of the season. No, I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the season. So as long as he keeps trying to get back, even if you're not fit till round 15, not saying that that's going to be the case, but you never know what's going to happen later in the year in terms of the midfield depth that they might need if they cop other injuries. And having Nat Fyfe there as a player that can come in and do a job for you, if he can get back to full fitness, that could be really critical for Fremantle later on in the year. So Nat Fyfe's going to be an absolute watch over the next few weeks. Moderate grade hamstring. We'll talk to Steve Gravina a little bit later on about that, about how he can rehab that and maybe a timeline, because Fremantle haven't quite set that for us just yet. And last little one from WA, Pat Voss. Love his energy, love his enthusiasm. He overstepped slightly. His goal celebrations are great. Overstepped slightly with a tackle gone wrong on Flostone on the weekend. 3 week suspension. They're going to challenge at the tribunal. So we obviously don't know that just yet as to how that goes. This one's very similar, I think, to the Jack Scrimshaw one from earlier on in the year, even though I think this one was more of just a mistaken tackle gone wrong with two players moving it at high speeds. I guess Fremantle will try and argue the severity of the grading, but it might be a little bit difficult to do.
Yeah, I think so. And the other one people have obviously been comparing it to is the Rory Lobb Mason Cox sort of swinging arm motion in that sort of event of spoiling a mark. Obviously, this was in a tackling situation. Like you said, two players moving very fast. Voss obviously didn't intend to break his nose and leave him sort of bleeding as he left the field. But it is sort of this MRO inconsistency that's been a big talking point and a big theme throughout the year. And you hope that they take into consideration these sort of previous ones that haven't been sanctioned as heavily. But yeah, he would be a big loss for Fremantle because he has been playing really well as that sort of backup ruck and key forward. And with Sean Darcy still not at full fitness, Luke Jackson going to be another at least week with that hamstring. It leaves Fremantle a little shy in the sort of tools department.
Yeah, and Jai Amos hasn't been in the greatest form to start, so that'll be an interesting watch. Do they bring Liam Reilly back in and play two rucks and try and get him and Darcy playing a bit forward? It's going to be a big question for the Dockers over the next little while. But Pat Voss will wait and see with him at the tribunal. This is the Footy Interchange. Great to have Eliza Reilly along as my co-host because Scully's cooked at the moment. He can't talk whatsoever. That means we've got the reins completely. We're going to crisscross across the country and check in each and every state with all the latest happening in the world of the AFL right here on the Footy Interchange. The Footy Interchange as we head to South Australia, which has been the focus of the footy world over the last weekend with a very, very successful gather-round event. Sim Thomas-Wilson from Code Sports and the Adelaide Advertiser has been a man about town over recent days. He's back on the tools, unlike Will Schofield. He's at work and he is at Alberton at the moment covering Port Adelaide. But Sim, first things first, mate. Your profile has just skyrocketed since you've gotten involved with this podcast. You're out there doing pub reviews now, mate. You're buying beers for punters in the pubs. What is going on over there?
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, I did ask for a selfie as well at one point. This is rare times here, unprecedented times for me. So, yeah, I've got you guys to thank.
How many free lunches / beers, etc. did you get? Because they had you out there reviewing all the different best footy pubs in Adelaide, wasn't it?
Yeah, we went out to a couple. Did some videos. Didn't get any free beers. Happy to pay and support local businesses.
Has the expense report gone through at work, Sim?
Not yet.
That's
we're waving around the new score of Amex then?
Yeah, he'll be throwing it down the street like a scroll, just rolling out. That's how long it'll be. Sim, gather round though, it was great. We had FOMO not being there across the weekend. What's your takeaways from it?
Yeah, it might have been the best one, I reckon. It was going to be the interesting one to see how year 3 would go because the first was always the novelty and second you had all the people with FOMO missing out. But I think they just did it really well. Like the Barossa was a great addition to it. The Norwood Food and Wine Festival was, I guess, bigger than last year. The SA government told me, so that's a massive thing for them. And the only probably downside was the games on Saturday at Adelaide Oval were a couple of stinkers. But apart from that, like the crowds were massive, the city was buzzing. So yeah, I think surely the extension is going to get done next year. So yeah, or soon. You'd imagine so.
All eyes were obviously on that final game of Gather Round with Port and Hawks. How big was that for the Power? There's obviously a serious rivalry between these two teams now, and it's only been inflamed by the Willie Rioli situation in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, it's a legit rivalry. You could see that they do not like each other. I mean, you could tell what Zach Butters was saying after the game as he celebrated. Can't repeat it on here, but that's a massive win for Port. That could be something that reunites their season. Like, I think I was just with Joe Ritchie's before, and it wasn't exactly do or die, but it was close for them. They needed to get a move on. And yeah, and then we've had the Willie Rioli stuff. I mean, it's he's deactivated his social media account, which is sad given the I guess the racist abuse sexual racist abuse that he got. But yeah, it's a complex issue, that one. Really complex. There's a lot of layers to it.
There are. So what are Port Adelaide saying? You've been there this morning.
Yeah.
There's kind of two different parts to it. So there was the post he put up about Hawthorn, not directed at their players now, but historical stuff about really hating the club, which he took that post down. But then separate to that is him taking some time away from the club because of racial abuse he has copped again on the weekend, separate to that post. So I guess what's happened, firstly, he wasn't at training today, so he's just taken some leave from the club today. They hope he's going to be back for the weekend against Sydney. So they're kind of supporting him, supporting him and his family as much as they can, providing the support, providing whatever he needs. Yeah, and yesterday they didn't realise how
how deep his feelings to Hawthorn were, how deep and emotional they were. So it's come as a bit of a surprise for them. So they had to work their way through that. Did the post, then he deleted it, then started getting this racist abuse. So then that kind of comes into it. Yeah, it was quite a really complex one for them yesterday as they kind of worked their way through it.
I hope that Willie is going okay. We head across town to the Crows, who kicked off Gather Round, and they were in a good position at one stage. It looked like they were going to just continue on their way with their forward line power and kicking away. They got rolled by the Cats in the end. What's been the fallout there around Adelaide?
Yeah, that seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it, that Thursday? But I think for the Crows, I mean, yeah, 5 goals up, in the second quarter. They let 2 slip before halftime. Matthew said that was the big thing, but some of their skill areas were absolutely diabolical at times. Mitch Hinge had probably his worst game he's ever going to have.
Didn't you pump him up last week as flying under the radar?
Yeah, I know. I said, fine. He started the season so well, and then he just had that absolute mare, like Rory kicked into the mark a couple of times. I think Martine tried to mark one-handed, and it's just Geelong are too good. You can't do it against them. So I think for the Crows, they just need to cut out these mistakes because their defensive profile is actually looking better than it is the previous couple of years. But unless they just need to get these mistakes out of the games if they're going to win the close ones against big teams, because it's GWS on Saturday at Adelaide Oval, and they were really impressive against the Saints. So for all their start, they could be 3-3 easily.
Yeah. You got a couple of days off now. Do you need to recover after Gather Round, or is the whole state taking a couple of days off?
Yeah, I think the whole state's going to take a couple of days off. Yesterday, I was coming into work in the city, and it was very quiet. It was very quiet, I reckon.
I'm not surprised at all. Sim, go rest up, mate. Great to chat.
Thanks, guys.
Sim Thomas-Wilson there over in Adelaide after another massive Gather Round in South Australia. The Footy Interchange as we head across to Victoria with our man Drew Jones from Fox Sports and from GOAT Fantasy as well. Drew, great to chat to you, mate. When we last spoke to you, you were in the car on the way over to Gather Round. Just confirm you didn't have to change any tyres. You got there safely. You had a good time. And what, you didn't drive back yourself? You took the plane back the other way?
I sent the camo back, Esky, to drive the car all the way
just
home.
Like a good
just one trip's good enough for me. Lots of grin spoon, as we mentioned on the way there. It's the last 2 hours are tough. Like initially, you're excited, you're going to gather around, you stop for lunch, feeling great, and then just the malaise of the afternoon just gets you. So no, I couldn't face the drive back, but I stayed and watched the Eagles game, which arguably would probably be worse than the drive home. So, yeah, either way, I got on the way out was just a sort of a kick out the door.
Yeah, those last 2 hours for Eagles fans were tough as well, which is pretty much the whole game. Just before we get stuck into the issues, Drew, how many people do you reckon did drive across from Victoria? Because that's been a big talk about Gather Round and why South Australia works so well. But how many Vics you reckon crossed the border?
Oh, yeah, thousands, I would say at least. I went to a number of training sessions throughout the week to different places. I think my favourite thing about Gather Round is the little stories you get from meeting people. And so I saw a young boy, probably 7 years old, getting his Rowan Marshall Guernsey signed by Big Row at Norwood. And they had like a little chat. And then I saw them on the way out and I sort of spoke to him and said, oh, geez, that's a good signature to get. Number 19 Guernsey, Row Marshall. And he's like, yeah. We left Melbourne at 3 a.m. this morning so we could get here for the training session and the signing session and get up close and see Rowan Marshall. So that to me there's lots of glitz and glamour and excitement and yada yada, but that's like you can truly connect with players and fans, and I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Simon Goodwin, he faced some music today. The Demons, they're under a fair bit of pressure as we get stuck into the actual footy news. Obviously still winless to start the season.
Yeah, it feels like we've probably talked about Melbourne almost every week. 0-5 to start the year. It's not crazy to think that they're winless at this point because I think we can all see they are trying to evolve and do a little rebuild on the run here. But they've still got 15 players or 15 premiership players played on Saturday night. There's still quality at the football club. And with Simon Goodwin seemingly unable to change this game plan, he can't right the wrongs of what the Demons have done the last few years, which is huge amount of inside 50s not being able to score, and now they've starting to lose the contested possession battles and clearances. Now it's sort of we're getting to the point. Okay, is this a coaching problem? Are they a rebuilding team playing poorly, or are they a good team that's playing poorly. And that decision needs to be made at some point by the Melbourne hierarchy. The only issue is, as we know right now, is that Brad Green is their stand-in president and they don't have a CEO right now. So making big football department decisions is difficult when you don't have your long-term leadership in place. So a really good example was used about Leon Cameron leaving the Giants in his 9th year at the helm, and then they make a prelim the next year under Adam Kingsley. Making a swift decision when things aren't going right with a coach can pay dividends when you've got good players at the footy club. It's just hard to know if they can make this decision while they haven't got the key hierarchy in place. So it's a real watch the next few weeks for the D's.
Drew, from one intriguing coach to the other, Luke Beveridge still unsigned at the Western Bulldogs. Is his currency rising?
Yeah, so this was put on the agenda by Carolyn Wilson, talking about, well, maybe the Demons might be interested in Luke Beveridge. He played at the D's. I think that was his first club during his AFL career. But I think more broadly, that even though that the Dogs are 2 and 3, I feel like they've started the season quite well. I think they're a bit unlucky. They probably could be 3 and 2 or even 4 and 1. The fact they've had so many injuries, I think Bevo's performing quite well from a coaching perspective. He definitely still has the buy-in from the players. When you see their performance versus some of the others, say a Michael Voss or a Simon Goodwin, as we've been talking about, who haven't been able to get the best out of their players at the moment, he looks like an attractive coaching option if the Dogs aren't willing to re-sign him, or if they feel like they're going to part ways at the end of the season. They had a board meeting recently, and Bevo said, we're not going to talk about my future at the board meeting. This is, week to week, I'm worrying about the football side of things. But I think Luke Beveridge can coach. As we've all seen, he keeps the Dogs competitive every year. And if he does feel like greener pastures or elsewhere, there might be potentially a couple of jobs on the market for him next year if he wants to be a career coach and move into the next job. So, again, that's an interesting one from the Dogs' perspective.
It is. Looking at the Bombers who come across to the West on Friday night. You were at Essendon today. For me, they're really a team I can't get a read on just yet as to how good or not good they are this year, but you were down at training.
Yeah, well, this is interesting. So, unfortunately, Nick Bryan, who's having a pretty good year, does his ACL on Saturday night, and we got to look at Sam Draper as the lead ruckman, takes a hanger on Max Gawn. And, one thing, during pre-season when I went to Essendon, I looked at Sam Draper and went, geez, he looks fit. Like, he's been injury ravaged for the last couple of years, carrying groins and various bits and pieces. But I think he actually got a proper pre-season and he really looks in good nick. The chance to unleash him as the number one ruck as a free agent coming into the end of the season, I think he could really, really pop as a big name who's actually gettable. The question is, does he go home to Adelaide? The Crows potentially looking for the long-term replacement for a Reilly O'Brien. I think Jordan Sweet's got the job pretty much nailed down at Port Adelaide. Or does he stay at Essendon and try and be part of this next wave that Brad Scott's trying to build? The interesting one this week is, of course, they've got a game against West Coast. They've also got a 329-game veteran waiting, ready to go in Todd Goldstein if they want to continue the 2-ruck setup. So interesting to see what Brad does with selection, but a big watch on Sam Draper. I think he's got a big year ahead.
Pretty handy with the amount of experience that they could bring in. Moving across to GOAT Fantasy and all the latest news. I think 1 year, Drew, I want you to do a team for me of players that are either out of contract or free agents and see what the actual uptick is in how much their value is in a contract year. We've just always spoken about Jake Stringer contract year, but I reckon league-wide, if you just pick players that are out of contract or free agents, I reckon you'd be able to get a little bit of uptick in performance.
Oh, no doubt about that. I reckon in American fantasy sports, that is the way to go. Contract year, they always play out of their skin. But yeah, the big one this week we're focusing on from a fantasy perspective is the ruck division. So Tom De Koning has had a great season so far, but just slowing down just a smidge. I reckon he's a bit sore. And then with Harry Mackay out and Brodie Kemp, there's just a bit of a gap in the forward line for the Blues. So just this possibility that Mark Picknett comes back, and we don't want the dual ruck set up for your fantasy ruck. So watch on Tom De Koning. And then Tristan Sherry, I'm sure you're aware of this, Paps, the struggles that he's had in recent weeks. It appears he might be carrying some sort of hamstring injury. We've been following it quite closely. Again, even captain's run on Friday at the Barossa, he came out in his runners, didn't really do that much. Brintika was out there doing lots of work just in case. I feel like with his value dropping, Tom de Koning now maybe Pitnet coming in, you probably need to make a decision in your ruck department. And Sam Draper, who we just talked about, cheap, possibly the number one and only ruck at Essendon going forward. So maybe there's a couple of moves you can make there.
I like it. And last one, what premiums can we chase this week if you're looking for an upgrade?
So if you've got money to burn, and that might be by bringing Reilly Bice in last week in defence, maybe you can even think about playing young Luke Trainer on field in defence, and because at the moment the defensive rookies are scoring just as well as some of the premiums. So, for instance, you might have a Kane Farrell underperforming, trade him down, get some money, and then you've got a room for an upgrade, which is a bit earlier than we normally would in upgrade season. So I'm saying Andy Brayshaw against the Demons after a big game last week against the Tigers. He's a chance to pop again. Nick Dacos breaks the Jordan tag, which was a little bit unexpected. All of a sudden, he's now taking off. So there are a few guys that are sort of ready to go. And if you're brave enough, Marcus Bontempelli will be back this week for the Dogs as well.
That's a fairly handy name to see back there as well. Great work, Drewy. Love your stuff as always, mate.
Thanks, guys.
Drew Jones there from Fox Sports, and also for all your fantasy news, check out Goat Fantasy. You're on the Footy Interchange. Well, let's head over to Queensland now, where the footy is absolutely flying. Could not get any better, really, at the moment for the Lions and the Suns. Tom Rockliff is our expert, of course, 200 gamer in the AFL. Rockliff Finance for all your finance needs. Been a big week for you too, Rocky, just firing people up on Twitter, getting political views going as well, mate. What's going on over there?
Yeah, no, you got to stoke the fire every now and then. I mean, I think everyone missed the point. I think they see Donald Trump and everyone has meltdowns now, unfortunately. But I just love to see someone come into politics that actually cares about our nation. So anyway,
well said. I think you got a fair bit of feedback going on socials as well, which was interesting. We won't talk too much politics here, mate. Let's get stuck into the footy. Brisbane, they must just be feeling so good about life now. Like, I know their starts have been terrible, but when you've got that much confidence that you can literally come back from anywhere, must give you a fair bit of a spark, heading into the second half of this season, given the great start they've got.
Yeah, I would have thought so. I think they're as best positioned from a reigning premier that we've seen over the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of reigning premiers not go on to play finals the next year, and the Lions are undefeated so far to start the season. Yes, they're still not playing their best footy, which I think is scary for the rest of the competition. But we've seen it in September last year. They had this belief that they could come back from anywhere, and they did. And then they got to the grand final and kicked into gear in the second quarter and blew Sydney away, who I certainly thought were probably going to win that game heading into the grand final after the prelim. But the belief that they have, and I just their front half of the ground is as potent as anyone in the competition. Charlie Cameron, Eric Hipwood, who we've seen what he did in the second half, Hugh McCluggage, Rayner, Morris, Day, Bailey, the Ashcroft brothers. It's scary to see that the talent they've got in that front half. And as a defender, I'd imagine walking down there, you'd be twitching somewhat, going, who am I going to go to and how am I going to stop it? And if they get their hands on the footy, that their midfield again is just as strong in the delivery of Lockie Neal and these guys, Berry, Fletcher. You've got Archie as well, that I forgot to mention, who was outstanding in the finals last year. I mean, they've got weapons across the board. They're not firing on all cylinders yet, so it's going to be scary in the back half of the year.
Before Eliza chats Gold Coast with you, just Brisbane Collingwood this Thursday night, that pre-Easter, that Easter Thursday game's become a really, really good fixture, I reckon, and it's going to be pretty much a blockbuster game.
Yeah, it certainly will be another sellout for the Gabba, and everyone gets along to it. So everyone will knock off work, obviously, Thursday and head straight to the Gabba for that one. I wouldn't be counting Collingwood out. Obviously, Brisbane have got a 5-day break that they've got to back up. We've had a bit of rain about again, as we seem to every week up here at the moment. But I think it'll be a really good contest. But again, Brisbane, if they kick into gear, if they're 4 or 5 goals down, you can never count them out. So I think Brisbane will get the job done, but it should be a mouth-watering contest.
Tom, Damien Hardwick infamously said a few years ago that he hates Marvel Stadium and that Richmond people don't go there, but the Suns are undefeated. Is there a chance he's going to rock up at Marvel and feel all warm and fuzzy this weekend?
I think he will, and he's coming up against his old side there as well. So I think he'll have a big grin on his cheeks, on his face, when he goes there. His new toys that he spoke about a couple of years ago, they're starting to fire now, aren't they? I mean, the half back, what they've brought in, Noble, Rioli, they attack the corridor. I think that their game style certainly suits the Marvel deck. It's fast. If they get to that corridor, good luck to Richmond and their defence trying to stop that ball movement with King and these guys in that front half. I mean, Tuke Miller's reinvented himself as a half forward, hitting the scoreboard, but also goes through the midfield as well. So I think they're ticking a lot of boxes the way they move the footy. They want to move it fast and open the opposition up, so that they seem to exit slightly wide out of defence and then come back really aggressively on that 45. So they could kick a really, really big score at Marvel, and I think Dimmer will actually enjoy playing there now compared to previous years.
Yeah, he might do just that. At the Q Clash, we're going to have to wait a couple more weeks until we actually get it, which is a bit disappointing because it'd be great to see Brisbane and the Gold Coast Suns go at it right now. Who would you have ahead if it was being played this weekend?
I think we spoke about the best game of the year a couple of weeks ago against the Gold Coast Suns and the Adelaide Crows. If these two teams continue on the way they're playing at the moment, I think the Q Clash will be the game potentially of the season. I think you still got to lean to Brisbane on their home deck, but it's a Sunday night at 7:20, public holiday here the next day. You'd imagine it'll be a sellout. And both teams, if they continue to string wins together, it'll be the first time in history that both teams have gone in undefeated. So I think Brisbane probably have their nose in front just with what they've been able to achieve over the last sort of 18 months. But the Gold Coast Suns will certainly be up and about. If you recall last year, Brisbane got all those knee injuries in that game. Darcy Gardner went down, Link McCarthy, and we've seen them backs against the wall. I think Logan Morris debuted after playing a VFL game. And they sort of embarrassed the Gold Coast when we thought the Gold Coast were on the climb. So there's no doubt that they'll want to be fired up for that one. So really looking forward to that game in a couple of weeks. Hopefully we have Scully back after he's been in the Barossa Valley. Did he get caught down there as he lost his voice? The big fella couldn't quite back up on a Tuesday of all time.
I thought he was a premiership calibre celebrator, Tommy, but clearly not. It's just all a bit too much for him.
He's still clearly in the Rising Star Awards for that.
Brilliant stuff, mate. Great to chat to you. We'll chat again next week, but footy just absolutely flying over there.
Airborne in Queensland. Just fly the Premiership Cup up now.
I think they're starting to engrave it already for one of the teams at least. Tommy Rockliff over there in Queensland on the Footy Interchange. The Footy Interchange as we head to New South Wales to talk the Swans and the Giants with Cal Sinclair. Cal, great to have your company again, mate. A bit of a tale of two different teams right now. The Giants flying, the Sydney Swans, where are they right now? It's a little bit hard to get a read on them given they've got so many players out.
Yeah, they probably didn't expect to be 2 and 3, but I guess when you look at their injury list at the moment, which got probably worse on the weekend with Joel Amartey going down with a hamstring, it's quite hard to see probably where they're going to sit and how the competition assesses them. Look, if I'm the coaching staff or if I'm Dean Cox, I'm probably saying to the boys, let's just hang in there till about round 15. Let's try and be in the mix for that top 8 and then just hope that you get some talent back with Mills, Gordon obviously being the key one. Their forward line needs to fire as well, but I just still think if they got to round 15 and they're in that mix, you probably might not want to play them if they're close to full strength.
What about their sort of X factor? They're missing Gordon, but there's others in that mix as well. Like, does it feel like they're in the danger zone?
I would definitely say they're in the danger zone. Like coming up against an informed Port Adelaide, who we know what they did on the weekend against the Hawks, they were absolutely brilliant. But they just can't continue just to bank losses at the moment. So I definitely think they're in the danger zone. Probably goes back to my point. They just need to, I guess, bank some easy wins, couple of statement games. They just need to be around the mark towards the back end of the season.
Yeah, if they can just be about the place. Very different to last year for Sydney where they jumped everyone and were sitting pretty up the top of the tree for the whole year. On the flip side, GWS looking very, very good. Jesse Hogan's been in great form. Toby Green, though, that game on the weekend just shows what a player he is.
Yeah, he's probably been forgotten about a little bit, Toby, and I mean that with all due respect. Probably didn't have the season that he wanted last year, but I think that forward line now, which I'm going to call it's the best forward line in the competition by far. Green, Stringer, Hogan, Cadman, and they've got some small forwards which are incredible role players. I think now there's a bit more synergy. Toby will see the benefit of that, and you saw that on the weekend with 5 goals. You talk about statement games. I reckon as a captain, he put his authority on the competition, saying, I'm not done. We might have some good players, but I can still pop up and dominate a game. But that forward line, I'd be a real concern if that ball goes in, whether it's on the ground, it comes in aerially. Each one of those players can play both sides of the ball, and I'd hate to be lining up on them as a defender for sure.
And what about this game versus the Crows coming up on the weekend? It's a massive context, but the matchup within the matchup, Dawson v Callaghan.
Yeah, I think that would be. I think Jordan Dawson certainly got his hands full, and that's no disrespect to the Adelaide mids, but he's probably got Callaghan, Green, Jones will go through there, Bedford will go through there as well. So I think Jordan Dawson has to have the game of his career in order to get a hold of the Giants midfield this weekend. But I personally believe that it's going to be the match of the round. Big statement game for both clubs. The Giants, travelling away to a hostile Adelaide, with not a huge supporter base, it will be a huge win for that club, and will just give them incredible confidence if they can silence that crowd. But equally for Adelaide, they came off a 5-day break against Geelong. I think they're still a very, very impressive team. They're easily the most improved team in the competition, but I'm going to call it now. I think it'll be game of the round, and I think Jordan Dawson has to have the best game of his career to take it to the Giants midfielders.
It'd be a fair game if he does, given the level that he's been able to go to. Did you think he had that in him? Obviously, a former Sydney Swan, Jordan Dawson, and he was just sort of a bit of a role player trying to get opportunities there. But since he's gone to the Crows, the way he's elevated himself to be one of the absolute stars of the game, in terms of the way he can actually just dominate and take control of a game.
Yeah, well, he probably just didn't get the midfield minutes at the Swans. For the entire of his career there, he was battling, Luke Parker, Josh Kennedy towards the back end of his career that probably struggled to play other positions of the ground. Callum Mills got embedded into that midfield mix. Isaac Heaney as well was going in there. So you just didn't get the exposure and the minutes that he now does have at Adelaide. The thing about Jordan that is so impressive is he can literally play at either end of the ground and in the midfield. Like, he can literally take marks overhead. He's clean at ground level. His disposal is unbelievable. I don't think there'd be many other complete players like Jordan Dawson in the rest of the competition.
Yeah, and always that added motivation up against your former side as well. Not that that's this week, but it's going to be really crucial for him to have a big game. And Cal, I like the fact that our guests bring their own content to this podcast as well. And you've come at us with Cal's big call on this edition of the Footy Interchange.
I am. I just think I've seen enough of the Giants now over a couple of years, but they are completely ready to kickstart, I guess, the Giants era of dominating the competition. A few eras that we've seen the Geelongs, we've seen the Brisbane Lions, which was the 2001 to 2004, which were unbelievable. Hawthorn with the 4 premierships. I just think if they can keep this group together and the dynamic of that forward line and that midfield mix, I think the Giants are going to be the next big era of the AFL system. And the challenge they're going to have is, can they retain and hold on to these players to play week in, week out in Western Sydney? I don't know, but if they can keep that mix together, I think we're on the path for 2, 3, maybe 4 premierships. There's a big call for you.
You heard it here
We're
first.
Clipping it up. We're clipping that up,
April,
and we're holding on to it.
The Giants era has begun, and certainly there'll be a big chance at the flag this year. Cal, great to chat to you, mate. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Cal Sinclair there in Sydney, just a little understated there, just saying the Giants are going to win 4 of the next 5. What was it? 4 of the next 5 flags,
Yep.
something like that, 6 of the next 7.
We love big calls because we can ridicule them later when they don't come true.
Yeah, he might be on the money, though. I think the Giants are looking very, very good this year. And they're probably a team that, had they got the job done last September, they were a real chance to win it last year. But, they were in winning positions against the Swans. They were in winning position against Brisbane as well, but didn't get it done. So it's probably a good sign that they're in the zone right now.
Well, that's the caveat, isn't it? They can perform as well as they want to during the season proper, but if you get yourself into that position in finals again where a team has momentum against you, are you going to crumble? That's going to be their takeaway from last season and the last final series, and you'd hate to see them perform the way they are during the season at the moment and then just sort of fall away during September because of the ghosts of 2024's past.
It feels a little bit like Brisbane of the last few years, where they could always make to September and play in prelim finals, but never quite get it done. Great to chat to Cal there over there in New South Wales. The Footy Interchange, time to get an injury update with Steve Gravina from Frontrunner Physiotherapy in Osborne Park. I think he might actually be on leave at the moment, so a very good effort from him to jump on and have a chat to us even when he is on holiday, Steve, because I needed to get some information from you. You are the man in the know about all of the injuries, and Will Schofield has just pulled out of the pod today because he has lost his voice. Is there any injury update you can give me, any sort of rehab he should be doing to try to get his voice back?
Oh, it's unfortunate, mate. He was always going to be high risk given the weekend he was going to have, mate. He can come join me up here in Coral Bay. Plenty of salt water to gargle and see if he can regain that voice. But he's probably he's a question mark at the end of the week, mate. But he should be a week away.
Yeah, test at least, I reckon. I think going on holidays at this point would actually be worse for him, I reckon, in terms of the lemonades he'd be getting stuck into.
Get back on the horse, I reckon.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I'm down there at main training just to watch how he's moving and make a call in him later on the week. But Steve, obviously big news out of Perth and the Waffle on the weekend with Nat Fyfe suffering this moderate grade hamstring injury for Peel. He's obviously been building back from that knee injury. What can you sort of tell us about that moderate grading?
Yeah, really disappointing for Nat and for the footy club. They've obviously taken a really cautious approach in nursing him back after the knee injury. And so for a hamstring to come up now, really disappointing. I mean, he's turning 34 this year. So, I hope it's not the beginning of the end or some major warning signs. But he was able to play a full year last year, which is great. The 2 years prior, he missed a lot of footy. So hopefully they can, manage this one. But it'll be a 3 to 4 week minimum. Yeah, they've called it a moderate grade. So, it's your typical low grade is a 2 to 3 week. This is going to have to be a little bit longer, particularly with his age and his history. But they've confirmed he's not going to, go under the knife. But it'll likely be a mid-season return for Nat now, and he's going to have to, rebuild again. Whether they do it through the Waffle or throw him straight back in, potentially as a sub down the track. Unsure, but yeah, it's not good for him, mate.
No, good that he's avoided the surgery. Given he'd been battling the knee soreness over the last little while, can that kind of contribute to then having other injuries occur if you're trying to maybe protect that or try to nurse that through?
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't fully reconditioned the knee, which you assume that he would have, it can create overload elsewhere with other muscles having to pull the string a bit more. So. You'd imagine the knee is, at optimum health and they've been able to build his strength up and all of the return to play markers. But, yeah, you're always really high risk in that first month returning from any bout of surgery in the lower limb. And, yeah, the hamstring is the one which, for him especially, leaves him a bit vulnerable.
We see a few injury concerns now at the Blues as we look at Carlton, one concussion and then really nasty Achilles for Brodie Kemp.
Yeah, Brodie, that's really unlucky. I mean, he's obviously, you can see the footage, he's on his own, just going to take off and it goes. And usually they look around and see who's kicked him in the calf. But yeah, unfortunately, when the Achilles ruptures, it's a long-term rehab for him. He'll undergo surgery, repair. It'll be a 12-month rebuild. And usually with these guys, you can get back after 12, but you're really not back to your best until 24 months. So it's a really 2-year type of injury for someone like Brodie. So it'll be a long road and, yeah, all the best to him. And with Harry, yeah, again, really disappointing. One of those mechanisms of injury which are pretty unlucky, just off the ball and clashing heads. Unfortunately for Harry, he's obviously had a number now over recent time. And obviously with what he's been going through, the return's going to be really unclear. He'll go under the concussion protocol, so we won't see him for a few weeks anyway. But, yeah, how he recovers from it and how he bounces back will be to be determined.
Steve, over at the Swans now, they've obviously had Logan McDonald under an injury cloud for the first part of the season, but they've lost another key forward.
Yeah, Joel Amartey with that hamstring, it's not great in terms of timing for Sydney now, where the X factor up forward goes out, and now potentially having to rush Logan back in. They were, being quite cautious with Logan after having ankle surgery over the off-season following his injury in the finals campaign. However, with Joel going out, you'd imagine he's probably the likely candidate to come back in, and they're going to have to be really careful managing him because he's likely going to be underdone. And then, the next couple of weeks, he'll have to play a bit more of a pivotal role. Joel, go through the normal hamstring rehab. It doesn't seem to be too high a grade for him. But with such a class player, you want to make sure you look after him and get him back for the second half of the year.
Yeah, especially with a bit of history, that sort of stuff as well, Steve. Great to chat to you, mate. We'll let you get back to the beach up there in Coral Bay. Appreciate you still stepping up for us, mate, and joining in.
No worries, guys. More than welcome to join us if you need.
I'd much rather be where you are, mate. Thank you very much, Steve Gravina there, of course, former physio in the AFL, frontrunner physiotherapy in Osborne Park. Well, that's it for the Footy Interchange today. Been another busy show, Eliza. Thanks so much for stepping in.
Thank you, and we'll keep very keen eyes on Scully for next week.
Yes, it'll be touch and go, I think. He'll be on a strict lemonades only, actual lemonades only, honey and tea, and we'll get him back by the end of the week. I'm supposed to be working with him on Fox Footy on Friday night.
Ooh, touch and go.
Hopefully he'll be okay to take his spot on the boundary. You can read Eliza's stuff at Code Sports, of course, and you can hear me on 6PR on Thursday night, Friday night on Fox Footy, and then doing the Freo game on Saturday as well. It'd be great to have you tuned in. If you've got any questions for us, though, drop them in the comments at YouTube, or you can hit either myself or Will Schofield up on X and drop a question there, because the question segment of this podcast, where we really want to hear from you on this pod and get you to drive some of the footy issues and discussions and topics that you want us to talk about that we might not have covered week to week, something that might just be burning in the back of your brain. Would love you to send the questions through, and then you can check out the pod when that drops in the next couple of days. But thanks so much for your company. It's been great to have you here on the Footy Interchange.